Steve, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. My name is Steve Ville, and I record and perform under the name Electrikill.
Fantastic. And when did you start Electrokill?
2 years ago, I had previously been in an industrial metal band that kind of the sound was sort of along the lines of Death Stars or Lord of the Lost, but
Wow.
leaning a little more toward the electronic side than the metal side.
Wow.
But the one guitar player was my best friend, and the other guitar player was one of his friends. And everything was going fine. And then it went fine until it didn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was pretty much what happened. And it all came to a head. We had a show scheduled 5 months in advance, and it was going to be a really important show for us. And 2 weeks before the show, both guitar players said, "Oh, we can't make it." And I said to them both, I said, "Well, I'm going to do the show. But if you guys don't do it, then I'm taking that as your resignation from the band." And we all had a big fight, and I did the show by myself, and that was the start of Elektrikill.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So quite a few of the songs on the album were songs that I had been working on with the band, like Drugs and Candy, That'll Be What Kills Me, Requiem, I Used to Be Human, Parasite, Becoming the Machine, Witness to Murder, and I Only Look Like I'm Dead were all songs that were originally written with that band in
wow.
mind. So they originally had guitar parts. And so when I went to record Monsters, there were actually a few songs that I left off because there was just no way to um take out the guitars and add keyboards and make it sound decent. So I think I left about 4 songs off that I had done with that band. And then slowly figured out ways to incorporate keyboards where the guitars had been, which was a challenge. So yeah. But
Well,
the
can I?
next Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I was just about to say, apart from one or two that you said there, they are all my favorite songs on that album.
And
So
they
you
were the
did,
ones that I had the hardest time with, like the ones like I See Demons and My One Big Mistake that I started from scratch as just keyboard songs. They were a breeze. They were like exactly what they were always meant to be from the get-go.
yeah,
I didn't spend weeks and weeks on them. Like I was just like, all right, well, this is what I want to do with it. And I sang it and I mixed it and I mastered it and it was done, with
yeah.
like done in a couple days. So everything else was like Drugs and Candy. I went through so many variations before I finally ended up with the one that's on the album.
While you're on the subject of Drugs and Candy, now this is my opinion. Obviously, it may not be correct, but I heard in that John Carpenter and Mortis throughout that song. Whether that's, like I said, my hearing of it, but that's what I could hear in that,
It was more inspired by Rob Zombie.
which links to John Carpenter in a way. In it.
I suppose, yeah, actually.
Yeah,
Um, but the only John Carpenter stuff that I mean, you hear his stuff during his movies, but
yeah,
it's more incidental. And so,
really,
well, it's like you're more focused on the action than
yeah,
the music going on in the background, unless you specifically seek out and buy his soundtracks, which I
yeah.
only have one. And that was because Ogre gave it to me because he did a remix on it.
Wow,
And I don't know anything by Mortis. I've
wow. And
heard anything by
no, you
Mortis.
don't know anything by Mortis.
Mm,
Wow,
no.
incredible. And it's quite it's there, definitely there. But obviously that's coincidence, and it's just
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely heard it. And My One Big Mistake, definitely I could hear, and I actually hummed it as it was playing, to see if I could match the beats up and the kind of the tone going up and down, up and down. Assault on Precinct 13 theme tune from John Carpenter.
I've never heard it.
Incredible.
No.
And honestly,
I'll look it up now.
Listen to it. And if you can kind of maybe hum yours to that, you'll hear that dun 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 dun, dun, and it goes through it, and it's amazing. And I was doing that all the way through, and I thought, so here comes that chorus line, and it was there, and it was like, whoa. Honestly,
I've never heard it.
Not a bad thing, because as far as composers go, he is really good. So
yeah,
but yeah, so it's just coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
incredible.
And my one big mistake was actually an older song that I updated for this.
Wow.
I don't remember when. I might have written it when I was a teenager. I don't even remember. But I had the music and I wrote the lyrics just before I recorded them. But it had music, but yeah, it's an older song. I probably wrote it in the 90s.
Fantastic. And Requiem. What an amazingly beautiful written song that is. That really is. I mean, it's complete contrast to the rest of the album, but it's just so brilliantly written. Really is. Love it. Just different.
I had written it for a movie soundtrack, and it happened during a death scene. So I wanted to write something really sad. And I had composed most of the music for this movie, but that was the only song that stood out where I thought to myself, this wants to be a song. So I sang over what was originally just a piano intro, and then the melody came in with the synthesizers, and then I added that middle part where the second verse is with the organ and the clock and the booms. That wasn't originally part of the music in the soundtrack.
Wow.
And the soundtrack, it just kept building and building and building. So yeah, that was the story behind that one. And then the woman in the movie who died, she died of a heroin overdose. So I had this idea to write the lyrics about life is a drug and we overdose on it, and that's what our death is about.
Makes sense.
So yeah,
does make sense. And it's a big album, isn't it? 14 tracks.
Yeah, it was. I didn't originally intend it to be 14 tracks. It was only going to be like 12, but then I couldn't. I had worked on so many songs and taken so many songs off of it. Like there actually was a song called Monster that was originally on the album that I left off. And then at the 11th hour, Everything Looks Better on Fire, My One Big Mistake, and I See Demons happened. And there was another song that I wasn't 100% happy with called Wrong Again. And I actually re-recorded it for the new album, and it turned out a lot better. And I'm so glad I left it off of this. But yeah, Everything Looks Better on Fire, My One Big Mistake, and I See Demons were the last 3 songs I recorded. And I bumped Wrong Again just so it wasn't a 15-song album.
Wow. It's just, honestly, it's so fantastic to hear an album that, I mean, it could quite easily be, I don't know if it is or was, but it could easily be a soundtrack to so many different styles of movie. It really could. I mean, it is like a soundtrack album, but with a difference.
Well, Requiem's the only one that appeared on a soundtrack. Oh, no. Right. Drugs and Candy was the theme song for the movie Grace in the Storm. But that was a really early embryonic version that I had done in an earlier band, and it sounds nothing like this version. But yeah, that had been the theme song from the movie Grace and the Storm. And Requiem, and That Will Be What Kills Me was also in Grace in the Storm.
Wow.
But everything else, yeah, I don't think anything else was in the soundtrack.
One thing I found about Elektrikill, I cannot find much information about the band online.
There's more now, but there wasn't when I first put the album out. I'm one of the things that when I signed up with Mooncoil, one of the things I talked to William about is I am horrible at presenting myself because I don't really have an ego about what I do. So I
No.
don't know how to talk myself up. I'm one of those people that needs somebody else to talk. I'll just do my thing and you tell everybody why you like it.
Yeah.
You know what because it's just like I made this album and when I was done with it, I was like, are people even gonna like this? Like, you know, I make the music for me and then
Yeah. So is this a debut?
yeah, this
It
is
is, because I couldn't find that either. And I thought, so is this the debut album or is this not the debut album? And well, that's made it more stunning then for a debut album, because it really is a great album for a first album. My goodness. I mean, that's amazing. What other influences music wise have you had?
Gary Newman. Gary Newman has
Yes.
always, always been my favorite. It's funny because when I was a little kid, I liked Blondie, and I
Yeah.
heard the song "Call Me,"
Yeah.
and "Call Me" wasn't on any of their albums. And so I had found it on one of those hits of the 80s compilations, and I begged my parents to buy it for me. And Cars was the first song
Yeah.
on the hits of the 80s compilation. And I grew up in a very rural area, and everybody around here listened to classic rock and country music. My parents listened to country music, and my mom listened to ABBA and things like that. So I really didn't have a frame of reference for synth music or
No.
you know, industrial or anything like that. And so I put Cars on, you know, Cars started playing and I was like, what is this? Like I
Yeah.
had no idea. Like my grandparents listened to Neil Diamond and stuff. Like I had no idea. So that was what just was like I would sit there and just play it over and over again. And my sister and I would listen to it. And we were thinking in the context of regular musical instruments. So we were sitting there thinking, trying to figure out what is that noise? Is he hitting a piece of wood? You know, we didn't know. And it was so fascinating. And then I went out immediately the next time we went out to a record store. I had found Telecon. So I had my mom buy me Telecon, and that was the end of it. So yeah.
I remember I wrote down here as well. I said, you know, apart from the two I mentioned earlier, and I said I'd have to add as an influence Gary Newman, and I was right on that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I could hear that in some of the songs, but it was a more modern Gary Newman.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I am influenced by older Gary Newman. And actually some of that crept into my One Big Mistake, because you know that drum machine that he used a lot on Telecon, and then he just reused it recently on the song I Am Screaming. I forget I forget the name of that drum machine, but it's like one of the very first programmable drum machine. It was the same one that Blondie used at the beginning of Heart of Glass.
Wow.
So I found online on YouTube some guy who had that drum machine, and he was just playing all the different programs. And so I sampled it. So that drum machine that's in the background of my One Big Mistake is actually that very first drum machine. And that was specifically why I wanted to do a song with that, was because Gary Newman had taken that portion of his old sound and brought it up to date. And I was like, that's really cool how he did that. And so, but yeah, I love like I had a lot of older friends when I was younger who like got me into things I never would have heard of, like Fad Gadget and Cabaret Voltaire.
Yeah, that was
So
something unusual. I first bought an album by them, Drinking Gasoline.
oh yeah, I have that.
Yeah, and I'd never heard them, and I just thought, what a strange name, and I thought, what a strange album title, and bought it and loved it, and all my friends just couldn't understand why I liked it, but I did. I just loved it. And there's something about it that was different,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, that was really good. That was unusual.
Yeah. And so Blondie, I because I grew up listening to Blondie.
Likewise.
So when you know industrial came along and I got into more heavy music, for a while I just kind of lost track of Blondie, but then, you know, got back to them. But then music I found on my own: Ministry, Skinny Puppy,
Yeah.
Death Stars, Lord of the Lost, Solar Fake.
Yeah, they're very good actually.
See, and that's what I mean about I didn't want every song to have the same vibe. I love Solar Fake, don't get me wrong, love them. But you could take anything from the new album and put it on the first album, or anything from the first album and put it on the new album, and you wouldn't know the difference.
No.
And it's just like, I don't want to do that. I'm already working on the next album. The next album's going to have a different vibe. It's going to be bigger, sound wise and things like that. I want to progress like a lot of artists do. I don't want to be like Death Stars too. They're kind of the same way, where it's just like, you know exactly what you're going to get when you buy one of their albums. They don't move forward with their sound. They don't stray away from their particular sound. They might throw in a surprise here and there, like Death Stars did a song on their last album called Bodies that was really different for them, but that's like the only thing that I can remember hearing that I was just like, oh wow, like that's really different for Death Stars, you know?
Yeah, it's strange why some bands do that. There's no, almost like they're just happy, although they're very good, they're quite happy just to rest on the safe sound that they already know, and they're not willing to put anything in there that's a little bit different.
Right.
And it's like, come on, go for it. Do something.
Yeah.
You know, impress us. You know,
yeah, it's like Solar Fake. They added a drummer, and their original keyboardist Frank left, and they got the new guy who actually could play piano and bass, and then the album still sounds the same. And it's just like,
it's odd, isn't it? It really is. I love bands that are a bit more adventurous, and they do try different things. Think Aesthetic Perfection do. He can put out quite different songs. Obviously, you've still got his distinctive voice, and you know it's Aesthetic Perfection, but there is a variation in his songs. Lord of the Lost, they can be quite varied because they have ventured to different kind of styles in their music, which they're pretty impressive, to be honest. But then
they build.
He is quite a great musician, to be fair to him.
And they're just wonderful people too. Like you look at their Instagram page, and they all seem so nice, and they all just seem like they're so happy to be doing what they're doing, and they just, you know, they just really they speak to me whenever I, you know. And then they have those 3 orchestral albums where it's
they were fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic. But even their videos, like during lockdowns, they were doing keep fit videos for people. But yeah, I think if you can do that, and you do separate the real you from the public on stage persona, I think that's where you can make more success as well, because you're able to separate the two, which is good.
Right. But that's where I have a problem with promoting myself personally, is because I'm not the stage persona.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, it's hard for me to go on Instagram or Facebook and be like, well, what do I type that sounds cool? I don't know what cool is.
Yeah. That's the problem, isn't it? Is how do you put it across?
Right. I mean, the music's very dark, but that's the dark side of me. The side of me that lives my everyday life isn't that side, you know? So it's just kind of like, that all comes out in the music, and then the rest of me is just like, let's go pet puppies. Yeah, exactly that. And it's like when I interview people and they tell me their day jobs, and it's like, what? But how can that be, kind of thing? You know, you're this person that we all see, and that's your job. You know, it's like complete contrast, you know. And it's just, it does amaze you sometimes how different people are. Yeah. And I know everyone's a real person, but somehow
it's very hard for someone looking at these people, and that's all they've ever seen is their stage, to kind of put them down as a, it sounds stupid, but as a normal person. But at the end of the day, we're all normal people at the end of the day, and we've all got to earn a living. We've all got to, I don't know, wash the pots and pans at the end of the day after a meal and things like that. We've all got to cook. We've all got to eat. And
I put my pants on every day the same way everybody else does, by levitating into the air and floating down into them both feet at once.
Nice idea. If it could only happen. But it is true, isn't it? At the end of the day,
special.
No, exactly. Yeah, what's next for you then?
I started working on the next album. I'm about 5 or 6 songs. I'm 6 songs deep into it so far, where 5 of them are already mixed and mastered. The 6th one is going to be extremely different for me. This song was very influenced by the song Never for Fun by Pig. You know how on Pig's first album, it was this one song just stood out like a sore thumb because it was really funky. And I wanted to do something along those lines. So I had this older song called Moral Combat that I had done with the metal band, the industrial metal band. And I completely had to reinvent it. And I came across this drum loop and I was like, oh, that drum loop's pretty funky. And then I found this bass sound it literally sounds like somebody's rubbing a balloon.
Okay.
And it's just like this really weird, rubbery, stretchy kind of bass sound. And so I started noodling on that. And that sounded cool together with the drum beat. And then Never for Fun popped into my head. And I'm like, that's the direction I'm going to go with this. But I already have the album title. I already have the cover. So the album is going to be called, let me see if I can get it. Oh, it's blurry because there we go. There. It's going to be called Propaganarchy.
Okay, excellent.
And that's what the cover is going to be.
Oh, wow.
So I made it look like a Russian propaganda poster.
That looks so good.
The lyrics are going to be a bit more political this time. Moral Combat in particular is about how the religious right is trying to shove their views down our throats in America. Like, you know, banning abortion was the first thing they tried to do. Now they're trying to take particular books out of schools and things like that. And it's just like, you know, most of the country isn't on board with this, and they're not going to become on board with it because you're forcing them to. So, you know, the Moral Combat is kind of about that. I have a song about religious leaders. I'm not going to mention the particular church, but you probably know which one it is. But religious leaders abusing children.
Yep.
So there's a song about that. There's a couple other songs that aren't necessarily like the first song that I'm planning to put out as a single is called Down. It's not necessarily a political song, but it's a lot angrier than most of the stuff that I do. It's also a lot more clubby. The rhythm section is really like boosted in that song. So it's a conscious decision on my part to write something a little clubbier, because when I play out live, the more filmic sounding songs like The Fallen Angel and Becoming the Machine and Parasite, where they don't necessarily have like a four on the
thumping
floor
dance beat,
they don't go over as well, you know, because, you know, it's not that they're hard to dance to, it's just that it doesn't make you want to dance. It makes you want to
love
listen.
that,
and that's it. Yeah. So it's like, while I do love that part of what I do, I'm backing off of it a little bit for the next album, because people really do like their four on the floor, you know, energetic stuff.
Your new album sounds, again, I'm actually really looking forward to it, because after the last one and now what you've said about it, I'm really impressed how far along you've come already, though.
Well, you have to remember Monsters came out in April.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Time goes so quick.
Yeah.
April the 1st, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I started working on, no, Execration was the first song I started working on. I think that was like back in July. So yeah, I kind of feel like 5 almost. Oh, yeah, I didn't finish about Mortal Kombat. The reason it's kind of on pause is because it's going to be the first song that I do that's going to have female background vocals. So
Ah, okay.
my friend Sharon, who I used to be in a band with, we were in bands when we were together when we were teenagers too. She was in my first industrial band, and she's going to do background vocals on Mortal Kombat. So it's going to be the first song that I do that's going to kind of have, like I said, it's going to have the Pig vibe, but it's also going to have the KMFDM and Gary Newman vibe, where it's going to have, female background vocals and stuff like that. But it's going to be funky, and it's also going to be aggressive, and it's got a bit of a weird skinny puppy ending that's going to fade into another song. So kind of like, well, you don't have the CD, you listen to it online. So one of the other things about the album that you didn't really get the experience of was how the songs on the actual CD run into each other.
Ah,
which is something that when you download the album, you don't get to hear. Like, you probably notice, like, the way My One Big Mistake ends. It just kind of stops dead. That's because it runs on the album. It runs right into I See Demons.
Yeah.
So that rise at the end, that's, yeah.
There's a nice flow to it all.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a shame. That's a shame with digital. You do lose some of those kind of things because every song is separated, isn't it? Literally, it's its own file.
Right. And that's what I'm going to have when I put Propaganarchy out on CD and on digital. Each song is going to have to be completely separated online, but on album, you'll hear the songs like fade into each other and slam up against each other and things like that.
Yeah. Wow. It's a whole experience.
Yeah, I'm actually going to try to kind of force people to buy a CD though. I'm going to put out a single of Down, and it's going to be before the album, and it's going to be Down in Execration digital. But then if you buy the CD, it's Down Execration, Down instrumental, Execration instrumental, and then 2 songs that I recorded during the Monster sessions that I never released. And you'll only be able to get those 4 songs if you buy the single on CD.
CD. Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
No, you've got to do something to get that. Because I think if people listen to the music as you wanted it to be listened to, I think they'll appreciate the music more.
Right.
Because they're getting it exactly as you wanted it.
Right.
Not as individual files.
Right. And that's another thing too, is when I get the breakdown of what people listen to, it's like so many people listen to just like certain songs, probably because like Everything Looks Better on Fire is the one song that has the most hits because it's got that title. I Only Look Like I'm Dead and Everything Looks Better on Fire, and I think it was The Fallen Angel, were the 3 ones that had the most hits. Probably people listened to The Fallen Angel to see if it was a cover, because there's so many songs with that title. And then the other 2 were just like, Everything Looks Better on Fire. What's this about? You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's kind of like a shame where, like, people tell me that their favorite deep cut off the album is Requiem, and it's got like 35 listens. And then like Everything Looks Better on Fire has like 1,000.
How does that work?
Yeah, it's because people will go to the streaming site and they'll just pick and choose by title. Like, oh, that looks interesting, let me listen to that one. They don't listen, to an album in order. Nobody, and not even whole albums anymore, is it? It's all bits of something. And I have noticed with
streaming services like Spotify. You say, play my music, and it will play the same tracks in the same order. No matter what, it will play them in the same order. So it's those same few tracks you will always hear. So they'll get the hits, but not the rest. Whereas with the fruit-based streaming service, that plays at random, completely random every time out of the ones you like. And I think playing them always the same in the same order, that's so unfair to the other songs you may have liked, because what happened to those artists then? They get forgotten about. If I've got 15 minutes of listening to music, I hear those same 3 songs every time. That seems so unfair on all those other artists I like that it isn't playing ever. And
if you
wrong.
You look Elektrikill up on Spotify, it doesn't give you all 14 songs from the album. It only gives you 10, and it plays those 10 in whatever order it feels like.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I know in some ways they're good because they put out, you get to hear lots and lots and lots of different music. But in other ways, I do think they are killing the way you listen to music.
Yeah.
You never hear music as an artist or band wanted you to hear it. It's just random.
Right.
And it's not right. It doesn't play it in the right order, or it plays some and then it will go to a different thing because it hasn't got the rest of them for some reason. I don't know what happens there, but it's just, I'm sure it's killing music in a way. It's supposed to help music, but I think it's actually, and then the amounts they pay is just pittance, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's an absolute joke what they pay people.
I got over 2,000 streams the first month that the album was online, and I made $6. Versus I make $10 when I sell a CD.
Yeah, that's not fair, is it? It's not right, is it, at all?
No.
It's really not right. You know,
and Gary Newman had said one time, he was like, I checked my streams, and he said something like Cars was downloaded like 2 million times and he made like $68.
I was just about to say, I'm sure I heard some artists say over 1 million listens or streams, and they got something stupid like $50 or something like that for it. And that's a joke.
Yeah.
Imagine how many albums that was.
Yeah.
And yet they make the money, though. They're making the money, all right.
Right. Yeah.
And they've done virtually none of the work. I mean, let's face it. They did the work at the start. They set up the platform, but the platform now runs itself.
Right.
Yes, of course, they've got the servers and things like that. I mean, I'm not saying they can't make any money, but the majority of the money should be going to the artist, or at least, the very least, it should be a 50-50 split.
Right. And not only that, but I'm paying the distribution company to put my music on all of those platforms. And you don't just get to go to Apple Music and say, well, here's my album, put it up. They won't do it. You have to go through a distribution company. So I have to pay the distribution company to put my album on all those platforms, and then I make $6.
It's a joke. It is a joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a nasty, nasty joke. It really is. Oh, I didn't even realize that. And who owns the distribution company?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different ones. The one I use is DistroKid, and they're really good. They're really good. They're not super expensive. I think they're like $75 a year or something like that. But
that's not too bad. But it's still an expense.
Yeah, when you put $75 into it and you get a $7 return,
that's not quite as good, is it?
Right. No. So yeah, but I mean,
that's the thing. It seems low. Oh, it's $75. That's not bad. But then you get virtually nothing back. And that's where you think, wow. But then can I afford not to put my album on there? Because if people don't find it, there's no chance of them hearing it.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And then that was something Ogre and I had a conversation about that, because I was saying to him, I'm going to start sending my album out to record companies. He goes, you don't really need to do that, Steve. Everybody kind of puts their album out on their own, and there's not really much that a record company can do for you now. He said that record companies don't really work the same way they did when he was coming up in the industry. But I'm like, but without a record company behind, you, I'm just Joe Schmucko with an album. When a record company puts a record out, it's like, oh, like oh, Metropolis put a new album out by a new artist. I want to hear it. Joe Schmucko down the street put out a new industrial album. Who cares? So it's kind of like, you do want to get on a label because there are benefits of being on a label versus, putting the album out yourself. Yeah, I put the album out myself and it cost me money that I didn't see back. And putting my album out through a label might also cost me money that I'm not going to see back.
Yeah. But
it'll be out there. More people will be buying it. I can do some more shows. It's really hard to find shows. It's America, the scene. I don't know what it's like in Malta, but in America, the scene is so insular, where it's like, if you're not from a particular area, like I'm from New Jersey, and if I want to play in Philadelphia, it's impossible because the Philadelphia area only wants Philadelphia bands to play.
Oh,
if I want to play in New York only wants New York bands to play.
Wow.
And this area is sort of monopolized by one particular DJ, and he's kind of a little drunk with power over it. So, I had a while back, because Fad Gadget passed away, and then some label decided to do a tribute album to Fad Gadget. And it was like 20 or 24 different bands that all had done covers of Fad Gadget songs. And out of all of those bands, 2 were noticeably different than the other ones. If you had taken those 2 songs off the album, you would have sworn that from beginning to end, it was all one band covering Fad Gadget.
Really?
It's like modern industrial has become so formulaic. Everybody uses the same sounds. Everybody uses the same rhythms. Everybody uses the same vocal style. Please don't think I'm bashing on modern industrial.
No.
Like a lot of it, but there is a sameness to it lately.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands out there that are happy to just use the same style as everyone else.
Yeah. And that's why I think like a lot of people are reacting to my album, because it's just like, hey, this sounds different.
Yeah.
This is, so, and then Acid Bath Records is putting Everything Looks Better on Fire on their new compilation. So that's something too that I can, when I send out stuff to record companies, I can be like, oh, I'm also on this industrial music compilation. And maybe if it gets a lot of hits on their site, if that particular song gets a lot of hits, wink wink, maybe Acid Bath would sign me. I don't know. So I don't know if that's like the gauge they use to decide who they're going to sign.
It might be. But you never know, do you, what some of them use?
Yeah. So
obviously it's up to them, but yeah, fingers crossed for you. I mean, you've got to try, haven't you, Chris? You've got to try.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing the work.
Chris, it's Steve.
Steve, why did I call you Chris? I haven't even got Chris written.
You called me Chris because we started talking about Lord of the Lost.
Yeah. Well, that might be a compliment. I don't know. Sorry about that, Steve.
It is but if that's why you were calling me Chris, then yeah, absolutely.
I'll go with that one.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't even know anybody called Chris apart from Chris from Lord of the
Yeah, Chris Harms. Yeah.
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 I don't know where I got that from. I honestly don't.
It's fine though. I could honestly think of worse comparisons than.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of musicians would like to be saying that we're compared to him. That's good.
Yeah. He's such a. I love their Instagram. Their Instagram is hilarious. They just seem like they all adore each other. That's the thing too. It's like rarely do you see 5 people who can stand being in the same room together.
Yeah, they bond so well, don't they?
Yeah.
They literally are they're like the perfect family. They get on so well. They really do. It's fantastic musician. So yeah, I suppose calling you that wasn't too bad.
No, not at all.
So have you got tours planned, Steve?
I'm having a hard time finding local shows. The last show I did was in July. And I would love to play shows. We played at such a great club and we got such a great reaction. And then I wrote back to them and said, well, if you ever do this kind of show again, let me know. And they're like, we'll do, and never heard from them. And it's just like, I try to contact clubs in New York. I try to contact clubs in Philly. I burned my bridge with the promoter around here because he was just, you know, like I said, drunk with power about who he was going to have come and who he wasn't going to have come. He had particular bands that he favored, and the rest of the bands got excuses. And you know, that was kind of the end of it. And that all came to a head this year. And like I said, I burned my bridge with that. So I'm not going to be doing any local shows. And yeah, it's just in this tri-state area, it's really, really the one place that I played pretty regularly was Noir in Scranton, which is owned by Josh Balls, who was the former keyboard player from Motionless in White. So I played at his club a lot, but his club's really small. And until he gets a bigger venue, he sort of put a cap on having bands. So even though I'm like a one piece, there's just like I would play in a corner.
Yeah.
He was telling me the last time I was there, he's like, yeah, we're gonna look for a bigger venue, but until he gets it, like, he hasn't had any more bands or anything playing there.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Are you ever planning on out of America?
Oh yeah, I absolutely would, but it's that sort of thing where it's like, I don't have the money to finance that for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing where it would be good to have label backing.
Yeah.
Because just like, I'm just a poor boy.
Yeah. That's the problem, isn't it? It is the finance behind it. You know, if you could get that finance, then make the money back, and that's not so bad. I mean, if you could guarantee your money back, that wouldn't be so bad. But you can't guarantee anything in this world, can you now? It's just, you're gambling all the time. Are you going to get that back? Are you going to get that back?
Ogre was telling me that the only way that they can finance a tour and make any money is with the meet and greets.
Wow.
Because just selling merch at the shows and just doing the tour alone, you'll break even to lose money. You'll break even or lose money. He says meet and greets are actually paying them to do the tour. That's the only way they can afford it. And imagine being Skinny Puppy and being legendary in the industrial community, and you're not making any money on tour unless your fans are paying to meet you.
Which is probably not something that a lot of bands like the idea of having to do.
And he doesn't. No, they don't,
because they'd rather meet the fans just by meeting them, not having to pay to meet them. Yeah.
Right.
It's hard. It really is hard. I mean, I can imagine for those kind of bands that are having to do that, it's like it must be a moral dilemma as well.
Yeah.
These fans are here to support us and they're having to pay to see us, and it's just, then they're having to pay to meet us. It's, yeah, it doesn't probably sit right with a lot of bands, but if that's the only way you can make money, what the hell can you do?
Right.
What can you do? I mean, otherwise no one will see you because you won't be able to afford to go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's just, something is seriously wrong with the music industry, for alternative music especially.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely wrong.
Well, another thing too, that it is kind of becoming an issue in the music industry is a lot of bands would make all of their money touring off of merchandise. And now the venues want a cut of the merchandise. It's like, it's not enough that the venue is already getting paid just for you being there. Now
Yeah.
they want a cut of how much money you make selling your own things. And it's
Yes.
just, it's kind of like they're, coming at you from every direction.
Yeah. I mean, they've worked it out how much they're going to make, and they've covered their costs and made their profit, but then they want that extra little bit of blood out of you.
Yeah.
And like you said, you've paid for that merch.
Yeah.
All yourself. So why should they get their cut? I mean, they've done absolutely nothing for that.
Yeah.
So that seems very unfair. I mean,
that's why Skinny Puppy and Ogre, solo, that's why they had to lean so hard on meet and greets, because it's the only thing that the clubs aren't trying to take money out of.
For now.
And I remember, the first time I saw Gary Newman tour in America, like, just waited out back until he went to go to the tour bus and got to meet him and talk to him. And then, subsequent tours later, the only way that you could meet him was you had to go to meet and greet. And I did go to the meet and greet, and I met him, and he was really nice, and he hung out with us for a really long time. I mean, a really long time. And he, he did the meet and greet right, and he did it very well. And he was just super nice. Gary Newman is super nice. And but I mean, I can't imagine going to a meet and greet where, like, you can tell that the artist doesn't really want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would probably suck. But you were just saying, you were like, this is the weirdest interview. And it's just like, because I don't know how to talk about like I said, I just don't have an ego about what I do. It's like, you could say, why is your album so great? And I'm like, I don't know. Shut up.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this is what people will want to see. The real you, how you are, humble, but I think it's great. We've just spoken about normal things, and we've spoke about the album, we spoke about your music, how you got there. So I think it's gone well.
Yeah.
It's been fun as well. There's been a laugh. I was going to say there's a laugh in it, so that's always something good. But yeah, would love to see you eventually in Europe and doing well. But I think Mooncoil is a good start.
I do have a live video from the last show I did back in July on my YouTube. So if you want to check that out, see what my stage setup and everything looks like. And
could you send me a link to it, please?
No. Yeah, of course I can.
Yeah. No, I can't. No. Get lost.
I am far too big of a star to send that.
Yeah. Yeah. You do it yourself. I have people for that.
I'll have my people get in touch with your people.
That's it. Yeah.
Mike and I only communicate through a thick wall of attorney now.
So new album, when do you think that's coming out then, Steve?
Sometime next year. I've got five songs completely in the can, a sixth song that's just waiting for female vocals, and I'm gonna write like another 4. I don't want it to be another 14 song album. I've decided it's gonna be 10.
Yeah.
So
10's about right anyway. It's still
And in hindsight, because I am planning to put this out on vinyl, and in hindsight, I probably should have left That'll Be What Kills Me and Becoming the Machine off. So when the vinyl comes out, the vinyl's only going to be 12 songs, because that's all that'll fit unless I make it a double album, and I can't afford that.
No.
Yeah.
There's a lot of expense in vinyl nowadays, isn't there?
Yeah, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like the companies that offer discounts, like significant discounts, are all international companies, and then you just pay that money back with shipping.
Yeah. That's the trouble, isn't it?
So it's like in the United States, if you order 1,000 copies of your album, it costs $1,700, but then you can use USPS medium mail, and then it's really, really cheap to ship it. Or you can go to China and you can have your record, have 1,000 copies pressed for $595, and that's great, but then it costs you $700 to have it shipped to the United States. So
yeah, it's a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they don't do it in America, though.
They do it in America. It's just more expensive.
Oh,
They charge more to do it in America, but the shipping's cheaper.
yeah.
In other
Yeah.
countries, it's cheaper to press, but then it's heavy, so you pay a lot more for shipping.
Yeah, because that's the other thing with vinyl. It is heavy.
Yeah.
It's heavy, especially when you get a few of them together. That soon gets weighted down, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, it's a lot cheaper to ship a 1,000 CDs than it is to ship 1,000.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
gel.
there's a hell of a lot of difference in weight. I mean, they are heavy LPs, vinyl, but vinyl is so nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I do love vinyl. I mean, I've got several on the wall. You can't see them from here, I don't think, in the picture. You might be able to see behind the head over there. I think there's one mounted on the wall you can just about see. I've got quite a few up there, but they do cost a fair bit to get hold of.
Yeah.
I did get sent one, which I'm sure the shipping was twice as much because he was so scared of the LP getting broken. He put it to between two thick pieces of wood. So I'm sure the shipping was more, but it did get here safely. So fair dues to him, it did work.
Yeah.
And it is scary, I think, sending a vinyl because it's so easy to break.
Yeah.
They are so fragile in that sense. I mean, they can take a bit, but they can't take the banging and things that some of these delivery companies can do to them. But I do think vinyl is a great way to go.
Back to They Might Be Giants. They had put an album out like in 1999 called Long Tall Weekend, and it was only a digital album. There was no physical format for it. It was download only.
Wow.
And they were one of the first bands that did that. So then a few months ago, they finally went, you know what? We're going to put Long Tall Weekend out on vinyl, finally. So they made this beautiful version of Long Tall Weekend. I was like, oh, finally a physical release of it. So I bought it, and the record itself was fine, but the box that they sent it in was really flimsy, and the cover just got completely mangled. I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's devastating, isn't it?
24 years for it to finally come out as a physical release, and I get it, and it's all bent and
and it's not cheap to get hold of. They're not
no
cheap. They are expensive, vinyl. I mean, vinyl is so nice. I mean, I've just recently got back into it, and it really does. I know you get the crystal clarity with CD and digital the same, but you can't beat that. I don't know if it's just the little bits of static occasionally, but it's almost raw. And I love that sound. You can't beat it. And I listen to an album properly on vinyl because I really can't be bothered to skip and lift the needle and move it along. I listen to a whole album properly.
Right.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And you get the cover, you can open it up or you can take the sleeve out and you just look at the lyrics and the pictures and whatever's put in there. And that is just lovely. It really is. And you get a CD and it's like, or digital, and it's just like, play. Digital is so boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
The only great thing about digital, and it really is an advantage, is storage. You don't need anywhere for it.
Yeah. And the thing, excuse me, the thing about it, that the one thing about it that's nice is it allows people like you to hear the album without me having to send a CD to Malta.
Yes.
But then the downside of that is, you're not hearing it the way I'm intending
you wanted it to be. Yeah. There's good and bad in every single format, I think.
Yeah.
There really is. And that is a shame it's not on an even playing field, but it can never be due to shipping and stuff like that. I mean, it is quite sad that. But unless I suppose an artist like yourself was to put a digital promo out where you've made it literally one file.
Right.
So it's exactly the same as the CD by putting it as one file, I guess.
Right. And then you have no choice but to listen to it in
to the
its
whole
entirety.
bloody thing in the right order then.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But then you could say then it's harder to review because you can't go back to the places you need to. You'd have to keep pressing skip the progress line and get the right place to go back. So again, there's an advantage and a disadvantage again. So you I don't think you can win in that sense. I really don't.
Right.
And I love the name Electrokill.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's just something a little bit different. And the way you've spelt it is a little bit more modern and kind
Industrial,
of
yeah.
industrial. Yeah. It almost, well, it does actually. It kind of screams industrial and loud and power straight away.
Yeah.
But I do think, I truly believe people should listen to your album though. It is just a truly brilliant album, debut album. Sod the fact it's debut. It's just brilliant. You'd think you are well established already because that album is, honest to God, it is brilliant. It really is.
Thank you. Wow.
No, it truly, that's what I thought when I first heard it. Like I said, I gave you 100% in my opinion piece on it. And I put it as outstanding because I just literally, it has to be one of the best albums I've heard this year because it was just so damn brilliant. And I didn't know it was your debut. And I would have guessed that it was a debut album.
Oh my God, stop.
There you go. There you go. No, so well done, honestly, Steve. Well done on that. It's just brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
It really is. And you should have every success. I mean, you deserve it because obviously you've certainly got the talent there.
Thank you.
And the creativity and you've obviously got a passion for what you do.
Yeah.
And that shows through with every song that you've put on that album. It shows through that there's been a lot of thought to it. It's not just being thrown together, you know, oh, I'll put X amount of songs on this. That's that one done. That's that one done. Yeah, just tweak that a little bit. That's done. You've actually spent time and made sure that every song is exactly what you wanted.
Right. And that's
that
the
shows.
thing. That's the thing that my partner doesn't understand is that when I finish these songs, I listen to them back relentlessly. I listen to them on my studio speakers. I listen to them on my stereo. I listen to them in the car all the time. And when I write a new song and I think it's finished, I will listen to it on every variation of speakers that I have in my house and in my car while I'm driving to work, while I'm coming home from work. And then I'll tweak it and then I'll listen to it more. And then I'll tweak it and I'll listen to it to more. And my partner is just like, oh my God, how can you just listen to yourself over and over and over again? It's like, you have to. You have to.
Because every sound system, it sounds different. Yeah.
Headphones.
And it could sound absolutely perfect on the system you've recorded it on. You play it on someone else's and they're saying, it doesn't sound very clear or it doesn't sound very good. And you listen to it and you think, oh, crap, it doesn't.
That was back when I was in the industrial metal band. One of the sort of sideways compliments that we kept getting was, I like your lo-fi sound. And I was just like, I don't want people to say we're lo-fi. You know what I mean? And that was something that really inspired the mixing and the mastering on this, especially, was that I did not want one single person to go, wow, that's really lo-fi. No, that's not what I was going.
You don't go for that, do you?
No. That's,
wow.
Garage punk bands go for lo-fi, not industrial. Yeah. So.
But at least you've also taken in what people have said as well. So you've taken feedback and worked on it there, which is good.
Oh yeah. That was a big, because Ogre, I have two, well, I guess three friends in the industry. Josh Balls, who I'm not really friends with, but I've played at his club a lot and, you know, he really likes what I do. So I guess we're kind of friendly, but we're not friends like we would talk on the phone. Then there's Adam Vomit from the Toilet Boys. He's a friend through magic because I'm also a magician. And that was actually how I met Ogre, was through magic. And so, you know, I'm it's like a lot of my music friends are magic friends. And so when I thought that I had the album done, I sent it to Ogre and I'm like, your professional opinion, what do you think? And he called me back and he's like, your vocals are too loud on everything. He's like, on some of them, they're like cringy loud. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, that's the problem we have as vocalists, is we want our vocals to be like, you know, we want people to hear them. And he was like, especially when you scream at the end of I Used to Be Human, he said, that's cringy loud. You have to turn that down. And so, I mean, he gave me a lot of really good, solid, very much appreciated mixing advice. And then there were whole songs that I ended up revamping because of, and then whole songs I ended up leaving off. Because like in particular, there was a song on the album originally called Monster that was kind of along the same lines as Requiem, but you can hear there's enough industrial in Requiem that it doesn't stand out completely like a sore thumb on the album. Whereas Monster was just that, it just sounded filmic. There was nothing really industrial about it. And that was one of the ones I ended up going, yeah, I think this song isn't gonna make the final cut. But that was one of the ones where Ogre said, I don't really think of this as industrial. And I was like, all right, yeah. So he gave me a lot of good advice. I try not to bother him too much about music industry advice and stuff like that, because when we met, I wasn't doing music and we were just magic friends. So it was kind of like, then when I started doing music, it was just kind of like, well, we're both doing the same music and he's in the industry and I don't really want to, you know, pick his brain too hard about it, because I'm probably the last thing he wants to talk about is that. So I do make a conscious effort with him to kind of balance what I talk to him musically and have it lean more in the direction of, okay, now let's do magic, you know.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is difficult.
I mean, you know, he does it. He, you know, he's a good friend and he does it, but I can just tell it's like, so I backed off a lot with asking him music advice lately. So but it's just kind of like, you know, all right. And I even said that to him. I'm like, you know I've been asking you about music a lot and I appreciate your advice and stuff, but we're gonna just go back to being magic friends now.
That's good though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always good to have a friend like that when you're in the industry like you are. It's good to have somebody you can kind of ask an opinion of.
It is, but by the same token, it's like, I understand it from his point of view, was, you know, he didn't want a music friend, he wanted a magic
friend. Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, you know, I continue to be his magic friend. The first time I met him in person, the very first thing he did was jump in my car and we went to a magic store. So
that's fair enough.
Yeah, that's, you know,
why not?
So I never really bugged him about, but it was funny because it was like, it was the Greater Wrong of the Right tour. Was it the Greater Wrong of the Right tour? No, it was, I'm sorry, it was the Weapon tour. The last leg of the Weapon tour, where I met him in person for the first time, and that's what made me want to get back into music, because I hadn't done it in a while. I had my last band had split up and I had started doing soundtrack work, and it was him taking me into sound check. And Skinny Puppy was on stage, we were doing soundtrack. There was nobody else in the place. It was just me standing there in the middle of the floor. And that stale beer and cigarette smell was in the club. And I just went, I miss this. And then it was like about a month later that my best friend, who I had been in bands with before and it didn't work out, came to me and said, hey, I apologize about the way that the band broke up. Let's do it again. I was like, yeah, let's do it again. So that's what got me back into it. I bought all new synthesizers and started working on it. And we were an industrial metal band, and then that fell apart, and then ElekTrikill's happened.
So, yeah. I'm glad you didn't give up though.
No.
I'm glad you didn't, because I think it would have been a sad loss to the industry.
thank
Because I think you've got a great band there. I mean, I know it's a solo project, but it sounds like a band, doesn't it? Electrikill. But the music is just so good. It should be heard.
Thank you. Thank you.
And like I said, I'm looking forward to more coming out.
Yeah. Well, you'll hear what I'm starting to work on. So
fantastic. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
But looking forward to it.
Yeah, I am too. I'm excited because like I said, at least half of, if not more than half of Monsters was recycled songs from the Industrial Metal project. Whereas this is just getting to be what it is right out of the gate.
So it should be more, what would you say, more perfect in a way?
Yeah.
Because it's as it is what it's supposed to be. It hasn't had to be adjusted to fit in.
Right. Like from Monsters, Ravenous, Everything Looks Better on Fire, My One Big Mistake, I See Demons, The Fallen Angel, and Your Browser Is were all new songs. They were the only ones that I wrote after. And in fact, The Fallen Angel was something I had written right before the end of the band. So that was something that was intended to have guitars in it, but it never did. So I never had to do anything else with it. Wow. So yeah, but everything else was stuff that I had done with the band with guitars. And that, like, Drugs and Candy had, like, you know how it's got that plunging, like, bam, synthesizer line. There was originally guitar parts there. And it was like me racking my brain, going through all my synthesizers, trying to find something that would replace the guitar parts. Because, you know, when you get used to hearing something a certain way, and then you have to do it a different way, it's really hard. It's like trying to do a cover version of a song that's perfect.
Yes, I can imagine that. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you make it sound? Because if it's going to sound worse, it's not worth doing. But how do you make it sound better than a song that you already think is perfect?
Right, exactly. And it's like when I play out live, I do one cover. I do Behind the Wheel by Depeche Mode because I have always been obsessed with that song. It is such a genius song. The way that Martin Gore set up the chord progression, that every chord in the song has the note D in it. It's B minor, D, G, and A sharp is the chord progression. And every one of those chords has the note D in it, which is why the melody line is very monotone, because the entire melody line centers around the note D. And then the way that Alan arranged all the other keyboards, it's like perfect. So the challenge to myself was doing a cover of Behind the Wheel that I could play live that sounded exactly like Depeche Mode's version, because I didn't want to do something different with it, because what can you do different with something that's already perfect?
It's not easy, is it?
No. And it really was challenging to like find all those sounds and go, I mean, especially the like the wheezy lo-fi pan flute that leads the whole song. It's like, how do you duplicate that? How do you replicate that so that you don't go on stage and somebody's like, that is the most important part of the song and your version sounds lame?
Yeah, exactly. You just don't want that, do you?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's very few cover versions that really stand out across the board, kind of thing. I mean, I can name two. Slice of Life Bauhaus. I would say that Ex Voto, an American band, they did it, and I think they did it better. Even though I'm a Bauhaus fan, I think they did it better. I also think then that Bauhaus did a better version of Ziggy Stardust. And I know that's controversial because everyone loves Bowie. But I think their version was just, it was spot on, but it had something a little bit extra. And oh no, can't remember the name of the song.
Look at the classic. The classic of all covers is Blinded by the Light by Manfred Mann. And then the original by Bruce Springsteen is awful. Like, if you hear the original version of Blinded by the Light by Bruce Springsteen, it's like, where did Manfred Mann come up with this version? Because they are night and day.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that
I've not
song?
heard it. No, I've not heard it.
It's like a really old, like, I think Bruce Springsteen's version came out in 1971,
Whoa.
and then Manfred Mann did their version in 1972. And the original version, it just, you know, it sounds like a standard Bruce Springsteen rock song with saxophone and all the stuff. And then Manfred Mann put synthesizers into it and just they made it what it should have been from the beginning that Bruce Springsteen didn't do with it.
Didn't do.
Yeah.
And then this, oh, go on, sorry.
No, it's just kind of incredible where just somebody can take a song that's just like, it's not very good, and then they can reinvent it. But that's sort of this sort of like a backwards way of me saying how I took the songs with guitars and made them synthesizer songs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you had to do it. So
yeah.
But another one would I've never liked the Beatles. Never liked the Beatles at all. But then Susie came out with Dear Prudence. Yeah. And I thought that was a fantastic song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was by the Beatles. And it's like, wow, you can make them sound better.
What I like about what Susie did with Dear Prudence was she sped up the chorus, which if you go back and listen to the original Beatles version, it takes twice as long for them to get through the chorus as it does Susie. Yeah. And it's just like, that's what made her version of the song, was that she made the chorus flow better.
Yes. But she did that whole album of cover versions, didn't she?
Yeah.
She did Wheels on Fire and things like Strange Fruit, I think it was. And
The Passenger.
The Passenger.
But oh my God.
Really good jobs of most of them, didn't she?
And I'm very naive, and I've never been into drugs or drug culture. So it's just so funny when like I take a song at face value, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to it one day and I'm like, oh, The Passenger's about heroin.
See, I never realized that. And it was like also Strange Fruit. I never realized they are the most horrendously horrific lyrics in a song. And I never realized it. I was just listening to this song, thought, I like this song, you know. And then you start listening and you think, good grief. Oh, that's a horrible song.
Well, that's like Blondie has a song called on the E to the B album. They have a song called Sound Asleep, which sounds like this quiet, nice little lullaby. And then one day it occurred to me, it's like, oh, it's about being so high on drugs you can't sleep.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it never occurred to me, but I always took the song at face value. It's just like, it's a lovely little lullaby. Oh yeah. No. Like when she's saying, you know, like, close your eyes and you will see micro flashing neon lights. Open your eyes and you will see it still looks like the same thing. It's like, oh, they're on acid and they can't sleep.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing sometimes. You just don't realize what these lyrics are about until you really think about it and you think, oh, damn.
Yeah.
I did not get that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so there has been some good ones. But it does take some time sometimes for them to click.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know, I can't remember the song, Steve, so you'll have to forgive me, but I know Moby did a cover of one of the Joy Division songs, and I'm trying to think of the name of the song, but I can't.
Why do you keep calling me Steve? It's Chris.
No, it's Steve this time. I know it's Steve this time. You're confusing me now. But yeah, and I don't like Moby, but this version of this song is just fantastic.
Oh, yeah, he did the Laura Palmer's theme from Twin Peaks.
Oh, Moby did.
Yeah, he did like a techno version of Laura, you know.
I didn't realize that. I love that theme tune.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be one of the most unusual theme tunes. But there are some damn good theme tune writers and soundtrack writers. I mean, well, yourself with this, but when you go to, have you heard of Max Richter?
No.
He's I think he writes piano music. He did the soundtrack for season 2 of The Leftovers.
I've never seen that. No.
No, but one of his songs, I can't remember what it's called either, but you can see there's someone in a video actually playing it. So you can see how it's actually played. And he's got the keys, but it's so difficult to play. He has to move his right hand while the other one's playing still the bass kind of line, right down the other end of the keyboard and quickly back up the other end again. But he has to keep crossing constantly. It's such a complex piece of writing. And you think, how did this guy...
why I'm laughing?
No.
He had a hard time playing Richter's scales.
Oh dear. But no, and I do. I just thought, how the hell did he sit down and think this was a clever idea? Let's make it so complex for a pianist to play.
Yeah.
but the sound is just fantastic. He really is a good pianist. I mean,
yeah,
he is really, really damn good. But that doesn't take away from your soundtrack. I mean, it's really
no, I
good.
play within my limitation. I am not a concert pianist. I can play some of this, like a couple of the simpler Beethoven pieces and things like that, like Moonlight Sonata, where it's just in 3/4 time and stuff like that. I'm not like where I can sit down and do that thing like you're talking about. But I work within my limitations, and the piano stuff that you hear on the album is about as complex as I get.
But it sounds impressive.
That's the arrangements.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that's where Depeche Mode has the big influence on me, because like with Pet Shop Boys, I love Pet Shop Boys, but Pet Shop Boys fills in all of the empty spaces on their records with pad sounds, with strings, with chords. There's always something that's playing like a long sound.
Yeah.
Depeche Mode never did that. Depeche Mode, part of Alan's genius was he would arrange if the bass line was going down, then there was another part going up, and then there was a part that sort of stayed static through the middle. And that's what made the song sound like it was full. Wasn't necessarily that it was full, but you had all these parts playing in opposite directions and in alternate directions and things like that. And then the melody line went along. It complemented the melody line. And that's, if you listen to the way I arrange, is you'll hear that same thing. When something's going down, something else is going up, and there's something else just that's staying like a static part in the middle. And so one of the things that Williams said that he liked about my music was that I don't overdo it, is that you don't hear layers for the sake of layers. And that's two things. One is that I don't like a song to overstay its welcome.
No.
And so I don't also like a song to be impossible to mix, because that was one, and I am also limited by the amount of tracks I can use on my recording program.
Yeah.
So, but it's not like I would put in extra layers if I could, because, there is something very bombastic about that. Like, I love Nine Inch Nails. I really do.
But then it's over complex.
Yeah. Like something like Closer, which is a brilliant song, but by the end of it, it's just like, you can't hear everything that's going on.
No. Which is wasted, really.
Yeah.
Which is wasted.
And it's like, even at the beginning, like under the drum beat, that you can already hear he's got two other things going on besides the drum. He's got this white noise patch, and then he's got, you know, those hoses that you spin them around, and if you spin them faster and
They make a
slower,
noise.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
That was the same sound that they put into the beginning of Animal by Prick. And he stole that, and it's very slightly underneath the drums,
just subtle,
closer. And it's just like, but it's a kind of the sort of sound where it's just like blink and you'll miss it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not.
No, as you were saying about not overdoing it with, that must be quite difficult, is it?
Well, one of the things that Ogre taught me, but that I was also sort of coming to on my own, was not just that every song needs to have its own vibe, but every part of the song can have its own vibe. And that's something that I think is really, if you listen to Parasite, how each part of Parasite, like the first verse has the really dark, spooky keyboards, and then that drum beat, that loop that I made that kind of sounds like I call it like a machine heartbeat, where I wanted the sounds in that song to sound like they were organic but also mechanical. So the first verse is really spooky, then the second verse comes in and it's got those big booming thunderous drums, and then that sequencer line, and then the choruses are like really stripped down, and then there's that sound effect suite that comes in after the second verse until the final chorus, like or like the way that I Used to Be Human progresses, where, you know, the first verse is vastly different than the second verse, vastly different than the third verse. You know, it's like you can have different vibes within the context of one song and have that song have a completely different vibe than every other song on the album. So that's the kind of thing where it's just like, what Nine Inch Nails does is they start with a vibe and they build to a crescendo where the song starts here and then it ends here. But I take the ideas from here and I spread them out across the rest of the song. So the song is always here, but all those ideas are represented at some point.
Point in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that works really well. I mean, that was something that kind of was noticeable. It was not a boring album at all. In any place in that album, there was no boring parts, because it was just, there was always something there to kind of excite your, what do you call it, your sensation in your ears, or whatever you want to say. But it was always there. Every song had something to offer that was not in the previous song. And I just loved that whole album from start to finish for so many different reasons. I mean, I don't know how well the album is done, but I do think whatever it's done, it should have done more.
Yeah, it's been doing well on streaming, and a
This
lot
is
of that
unreal.
is a lot of that is due to William. But as far as physical copies, I've only sold about 100. My first industrial band that I was ever in, I had this guitarist who was very impressed with himself. And he started to become really insufferable. And I remember saying to him one day, I had to bring him back down to earth, because he was really getting to the point where it was like, we were in the band with him, we couldn't stand being around him, because he was just so impressed with his ability to play guitar.
Wow.
And we were having some success, and that wasn't helping. So his ego was really out of control. And there was one day I just, excuse me, I just took him aside and I said, you didn't cure cancer. You're not the second coming of Jesus Christ. You play a guitar. Get over yourself. And that's, you know, that's the way I look at music. Like, I don't think, when people say that's an important record, I'm like, how is it an important record? No record is important. It might be important to other records, but it's not important. And that's kind of like, I make music because I enjoy it. I hope other people enjoy it, but I don't place any false importance on what I do or on myself because I do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to be grounded.
Yeah, except that it makes it impossible for me to sell myself because I just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I'm not cool. So I can't go on like Instagram and make a cool post like, hey, cats and kittens, what's going on today? I just feel like I sound like an idiot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the trouble, isn't it? It's having that. Some people have got this, I don't know. It's kind of a, I don't know. Is it equality where they can just put themselves out there as confident and as egotistical as they need to be?
I can do that on stage though. If I'm on stage, that's my element and I can sing to the audience and I can be that guy. When I'm off stage and I have to present myself that way when I'm not doing it, I can't. I just absolutely can't. I'm if I would meet a fan and the fan would start crying, I'd be like, please don't cry.
Yeah.
Like I'm really just like, I shop at Walmart. Please don't cry.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love that. But yeah, because at the end of the day, you might have your persona on, but there's still a reality underneath that persona, isn't there? And it's
right.
ready to come out any point, and that's it.
I remember I was hanging out with Ogre one time and he met a fan and the fan walked away and she was shaking. She was like, oh my God, I just met Ogre. And I'm sitting there like, what? It's just Ogre.
Yeah, that's the thing though, isn't it? When you get used to people.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's some people have said to me, oh, how did you cope with hanging out with so-and-so all day? That was just, we're friends. That was easy. You know, there's nothing to it. They're just people.
When I first started playing at Noir, I had no idea Josh Balls had formerly been the keyboardist of Motionless in White. I didn't find that out until like, I think the second or third time I played there. And then it was like, you know, so I just talked to him like a regular person and he just talked to me like a regular person, you know, and he did say to me, you know, like I remember every time that I came, I showed up a little bit early and he was like, wow, I can't believe you show up on time. And I'm like, well, yeah, you said, you know, doors opening was at 7 o'clock and that I should be here at 6 o'clock to set up. He's like, I've been in bands. Nobody ever does that. He's like, nobody shows up when they're supposed to show up. Sound check is never when it's supposed to be. He's like, you're the first person I've ever met who does that. So, you know, and then I had no idea that he was talking about Motionless in White when he was talking about that. So,
wow. It's funny people's attitudes towards other people, isn't it?
Yeah. So I had said something on that commercial. I had said something like along the lines of, you know, how are you doing a masterclass on music production if you don't play an instrument? And I got dragged. And people were like, oh, you're so old fashioned to think that you need to play an instrument to make music. And it's just like, no, you need to play an instrument to make music.
Yeah, you do.
Or at least be able to sing or something, you know, even if you're the instrument, but don't draw a line across the screen and go, that's it, I'm a musician.
It's like, I can play GTA, so I can drive a real car. No, you can't. But it's true, isn't it? I mean, it's just, music is made with an instrument.
Yeah.
At basic level. And then obviously you can do all the modern tricks and whatever and adjust stuff. But you do need to know how to play an instrument, surely.
Yeah. I love to experiment. Like when I'm making, like one of the things that for one of the songs, Execration, that's going to be on the new album, I had come up with this bass line and I thought the bass line sounded pretty cool, but I thought to myself, what would happen if I spun it around backwards? So I took the entire wave sample of the bass line that I had recorded and I put it into this other program and flipped it backwards and put it back in with the drums. And it sounded so cool. It sounded like really, my friend describes it sounds crawly. And I'm like, well, that's the way it's staying now. So it's like people will hear that and be like, oh, that's really cool. I wonder how he did that. And it's just like I took the regular bass line, which was just a regular stabby synth part, and I just spun it around backwards. So now the decay is the beginning of the bass sound.
Yeah.
And it's just it's those kind of things that I love doing. And Execration also has this other thing I did where I took samples of a pig squealing and 4 different Aztec death whistles, and I layered and panned them. Then I pitched them down and spun that around backwards. So there's just this crazy, it sounds like a screaming sound during the chorus, which was something I used to just make it a little more aggressive. And it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's almost subliminal that you notice it's in the background of the song, but you don't really pay much attention to it. But it's just like, it took so much work to just make that one sample that you're probably not even really going to pick.
But you know it's there.
But I know it's there. And without it, that part of the song sounds really empty, you know?
Yeah. But that's what I loved about the album, was the fact you could tell that you have literally gone through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that every little bit of every song or every track was what you wanted.
Right. And I played a lot of it too. That's something too, is that's something that William pointed out, was like, he likes the organic part of the sound, which was something that I thought was really important. I'm a keyboard player. I like to play. So programming just is kind of like, well, if I can play it, why would I program it? There's like this sense in the industrial community that everything's got to be perfectly timed with the clock. And it's just like, but that's not how industrial started. Throbbing Gristle and Fad Gadget and Cabaret Voltaire, that's not what they did at the beginning. They played, and it's just kind of like, yeah, there is something to be said for the perfect timing of certain things, like especially really fast sequenced parts, but simple parts and things like that, play them. You play it once and you're done. You don't have to, sit there and play it into a recorder and then copy it and blah, blah. Just play it. So that's what I do. So there, you've got all the electronics that are all playing in perfect time, and then you've also still got the human element in the music too, which I think is just something that's been missing.
Yes, something
needs to be there.
There needs to be the human side to it as well.
Like Warm Leatherette by The Normal. The whole song is just the drum beat and the sound effects. But you can hear a couple times during the song where somebody screws up. It's 2 notes and somebody screwed it up, and they left it in the version that they released. It's kind of like amazing. It's just sort of like.
Do that reminds me of that very early Front 242 video. Did you ever see that? Where,
I don't know which one.
Oh, there's a very early one where they're playing and the drummer, synth drummer, obviously, plays something a bit different. The other one attacks him and they're fighting on the floor, but they left it in. I think it's just brilliant. It's just like, that's what music is about. Someone's made.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. Someone, made a mistake, but they've left it in the video because it adds to the fun of it, and that's what it's all about in the end, isn't it? Making people, music is there to make people feel probably happy in a way.
Yeah.
And a video is there to accompany that feeling. And if that video makes you laugh, let it be as it is. Don't make it perfect. You don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like Fad Gadget, the song Ricky's Hand. There's a mistake in Ricky's hand. And I notice it every single time. At the end of the second verse, the drum machine part for the second verse goes on 1 beat too long before the drum machine part for the chorus starts. So there's one missed beat at the beginning of the second, instrumental part where it's nee, 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 nee. And it's just, I notice it every time, and I'm like, they should have reprogrammed it, and they didn't. And that was one of the things too that New Order said, was they said that the reason that a lot of their songs are so long is because when they're programming the drum machine, they screw up how many times they're supposed to repeat a pattern, and they just are like, I guess we'll just play over this now.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. They said the reason Blue Monday is so long is because they messed up the programming the drum machine. They screwed it up.
I
and so
think
they
I
ended up
heard
playing
something
extra,
on that lines. Yeah.
yeah. They ended up playing, parts extra long that they weren't originally going to play that long. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And it became the biggest selling 12-inch in history.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it was a fantastic record. That
yeah,
was a fantastic record.
but think how different it might have gone if it had been programmed the way that they originally intended instead of the way
it'd have been too short then.
Yeah.
I think it really would have been. I don't think it would have been the success
Yeah.
it is now. I don't think it would have been with it. If they'd made that a shorter version, I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah, because it wasn't extended. It wasn't an extended mix. That the version that's on that 12-inch is how they recorded it, like Bauhaus with Bela Lugosi's Dead.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That was at one point, wasn't that only played live? It was never recorded. It was just an always live song originally.
That was their very first single was Bela Lugosi's Dead. That
was
their
it?
First one. And the thing that's funny about it was I had read an interview with Kevin J, and he said that because they're credited as being the progenitors of goth rock, and they were like, we weren't trying to do goth with that. We kind of thought that it sounded like reggae.
Really?
They thought that they were making a reggae song with Bela Lugosi's Dead.
Cool, definitely not.
No.
It's about as goth as you can get.
Not reggae, but like dub or something like along the same lines as reggae. But they were just like, that's what we thought we were making, You
got, I mean, he's another one. He's another great performer, and their music it stands the test of time as well, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Bauhaus was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So many great songs out of that band.
Yeah.
But right, Steve, is there anything else?
I don't know. Do you have anything else you want
to? I think we've covered. Well, we've covered everything I had to ask, and so much more. I think we've covered every topic we could have done.
We've covered everything from the Beatles and the Monkees to Solar Fake and Lord of the Lost.
Lord of the Lost. We've gone to Newman, Susan the Banshees, now Bauhaus, Fad Gadget. We've done the whole lot, haven't we?
Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah, have a good day.
Yep, you too, and keep in touch.
Okay, absolutely.
Take good care. Take good care.
You too.
Bye. Bye, Steve. Bye.